I now call this committee of the whole of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. All right. Am I supposed to turn these over to you? All right. Up for our only agenda item tonight is our ISB board training. Tonight we have Lou and the executive director Lisa Bartusik, as well as Harry Heigenthal participating via Zoom. I will turn it over to you all now. As long as the microphone's on.
Can you hear us, Harry?
Now I can. I'm wondering if you have to push your microphones for me to be able to hear you.
I did.
Thank you.
And
Perfect.
I said glowing comments about you, Harry. Well, you
Well,
couldn't
it's
hear.
good. It's good I didn't hear them, but record them. I'll get them to my wife. Okay.
So, as I said, Davenport School Board, thanks so much for having us, all of us. But I have to tell you, I have a special moment today because it's my first time to see all of you together and to say congratulations. I got to say that to by email to Dan and TJ. But congratulations on the milestone that you have done that no other school board in our state has ever done, which is go through an accreditation process and come out stronger on the other side. And do I get to say I'm so proud to say that I get to know you for what you've done. So I know it took a lot of hard work. And now the real hard work's ahead, right? Is to become the district you really want to be. So with that, I think I'm turning it over to Harry because we have some reflections, but you're going to start. Is that right, Harry?
You bet. A couple comments, and then I'm going to come right back to you, Lisa. And you're okay with the audio for me? Great. Thanks again for the opportunity. I would characterize this next few minutes as both a kind of a combination of lessons learned as well as a celebration from your work. And one of the things in our monthly debrief meetings and hours would be Dan and Linda and TJ and then Lou and I each month continue to meet. And out of one of those planning sessions, um, uh, your board leadership was aware that about 12 years ago, ISB went through a very rough patch, a very rough patch. And as an association, we were under intense scrutiny by the legislature, a legislative oversight committee, the media, and a host of others. And that was a very rough ride. And I think as we look back, there are some parallels from our experience as an association governed by a board made up of about 15 members from across the state. Some parallels, uh, though we're not a school district, parallels with your role as a board and a board superintendent team, providing leadership through hard times and more importantly, not being stuck there but moving forward. And how do you take those lessons learned and what helped our organization move forward and likely some parallels that you might be able to draw from that. So with that in mind, Lisa, if you would share, I was interim for a few months there when we were kind of right in the throes of challenging circumstances, And after that, there were a couple of interim leaders, and then Lisa became long-term director and have been there, what, 8 years, Lisa, if I counted right, something like that. So Lisa, if you would please just share some overall insights, life after the storm, in a sense, and what has helped from your perspective as a leader of ISB and observing the board's work. Uh, things you observed and learned, Lisa, and what it meant for leadership of the organization.
And how many days do we have?
Yeah.
And Harry, did you want to refer to a certain page that want folks to listen for insights?
Yeah, please, if you, on page one, just if something Lisa or I share catches your attention, just jot a word or two down, or a thought, an insight. And likewise, if you have questions, just jot down a word or two, and we'll take some time toward the end of this segment and kind of respond to questions and places you might want to probe. So with that, thanks, Lisa.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. This period in IASB's history goes by several names now. It's called by staff the dark years. By me, it's called the heart attack. At 65 years old, the Iowa Association of School Boards had a debilitating health crisis that nearly killed us. Reputationally, we lost members. As Harry said, it was bad. But in the end, that heart attack made us stronger. Um, we worked really hard to get healthy, and now I'd say we're marathon ready to run a marathon. So lessons learned from the heart attack. There are a lot, but one thing I think our board did right away was put in place. After they rectified the immediate situation, which was to put in place a leader people could trust, and that was Harry. To tell you the truth, a good move IASB board to name Harry as an interim, because people did know Harry and trusted him, and then he did the hard. And so I'm going to actually say something nice about you, Harry. One of the first things he did was for us at that time, right, under this intense public scrutiny, was simply to say to the members, we are sorry. IASB has let you down. You deserve more from our organization. But then moved on to work through, I would say, a couple years, Harry, of with then an interim. Harry was pulled into duty, well, because no one else was going to do it, but another interim that let Harry do what he was really good at, which was work with boards, of just being under fire, auditors, attorneys, govern things. But by the time, the big lesson learned I wanted to share with you is by the time our board got through all that hard part, where I think they were kind of felt under assault, and things started to settle down a little bit. The headlines started to stop, and the government oversight things. They did one thing that I think was a turning point for IASB, and that was to come together as a board. It was 2012, so 2 years of being under assault. In 2012, and adopt a strategic plan. And those that are still on our board we'll still refer to it the time at the zoo, because they went to the Des Moines Zoo to do this work. And it really helped our board unify together and say, in my mind, we want our IASB back. And that kind of gritty determination that no matter what it takes, we're going to be the organization we want it to be, came out of that work that they did together. Had a facilitator, but ultimately they did the work. And they established our mission, our vision, our 3 goals, which what we're about is board development, helping boards be effective, advocacy for public education, and then at the time in 2012, it was financial security, because we were way off kilter in our ability to be a sustainable organization. Since then, that third goal turned into organizational excellence, a little more solid financially, but now we have to work on all of them. strategic plan time got communicated for me as an exec in applying for the job in 2014, knowing that plan was in place and that I could see this is the work I wanted to do, um, and that we could use those simple things to hang all of our work on, made a huge difference. And we communicated the simple things that we were, what we were about, our values, and those three big goals: effective school boards, advocacy, and then accountability for the funds that you invested. Um, I use that work as a leader with our staff to work to continue to rebuild our culture, and that's another takeaway I have as the CEO is how much culture building we had to do, because our staff that had stayed with IASB through that intense negative scrutiny, like this one, um, deserve support. And I spent more time than I would have expected in communication. And the prior executive director from 2012 to 2014, Tom Downs, spent a huge amount of time just healing people who'd been embarrassed and hurt, because who wants to work for an organization that's on the front page of the register every day for weeks? I had one staff member tell me, I'm embarrassed to go out to dinner because I see the newspaper on the stand there that talks about us. So it was both that listening, conversations with our staff and our members who are, some of them quite mad, and deservedly so, to try to bring the organization together with its people, but then the mix of the kind of culture building and conversations was way to make the trains run on time. We have to actually deliver results. We weren't getting things done. People were distracted by fighting fires, and the weaknesses that existed to allow the dark years to happen, which was some malfeasance among key staff members and then the board. In my opinion, the board of directors at the time responded as quickly as possible, but it did take time for the board to respond. And by then the damage was done. So my lesson was, it took 65 years to build up an organization and about 6 months to virtually destroy it. So making the trains run in time is the metaphor I use for ensuring we were structured right with our staff in the right places, with the right amount of work to do, the right supports to do that, and delivering the results that we promised. So culture building and making the trains run on time. And I tie those to that strategic plan because every year we could identify our annual objectives. What we're going to accomplish this year, what's our next step, and then celebrate the wins when we accomplished it. We didn't work on everything at once. We didn't say, well, that'll have to wait. We're going to work in this area. There's only so much time and attention that the board and the leaders have. And that's hard to choose. And then my last one beyond that is I know that myself as the executive director, I had to do, like you know, the bulk of the work with the staff, and I represent us externally. Our board really looked internally at itself and structured itself. And I think each board president that I had the pleasure to work with especially knows that their intent is to build a structure that not only models excellence in board governance, but ensures that, well, you can never say never, but the dark years are going to have a whole lot of harder time ever happening to prevent the damage that occurred. And so some examples that they keep the strategic planning cycle alive. We're about to do a new one in July, and it's part of board orientation. There's an orientation process every January. They've established their committees, audit and finance, compensation and benefits, and governance and bylaws, and made them strong and functioning. And it works for them. I'm not recommending that you model what the IASB board does, but rather that you work on the structure that works best for you, which would allow me to take one side comment. IASB is a tiny little nonprofit, right? We're like $3.4 million budget, less than 22 full and part-time staff members. We're a lot simpler entity than a major urban school district. But leadership is leadership. And some of the strategies are simpler. But it also allows me to say, it was hard enough to do that work. So I commend you for being willing to do a more complex job, because you got a lot more complex organization to lead. But the board established those structures that works for us. They adopted the federal nonprofit guidance as their standards of best practice. In nonprofit lingo, if you're familiar, it's the Internal Revenue Service 992 standards. And the key is that they can point to those standards in their monthly work. Every meeting opens with declaring, does anyone have a conflict of interest? As an example, it's built into the culture of the board and their operations. I'll just give you one more example, because I think that's important that the board could tie its practices directly to the systems they were trying to build, both from vision and strategic planning to operations that prevent damage in the future. Part of the dark years was that the executive director managed to give herself over $100,000 raise without board approval. So that shouldn't have happened. So now there is a clear structure in policy that's implemented every year to review executive compensation. Who does it, when they do it, what forms they fill out when they do it, and when they act on it. It's built into the operations of the board and policy. And then, of course, the staff are educated. No matter what I say, not a staff member at IASB is going to let me give myself a big raise. And that's the way you would want it. And I guess I use that as an example from IASB because it shows the integrity and operational structure they were striving to build. I think I'm going to stop here. What do you want to add, Luann? What do you want to add? What did I miss?
I would share a couple examples, and then after the board has a chance to share any insights or questions, then we'll ask them to reflect on what's worked for them. Here's a good example, and I hope it's near and dear to your heart because, again, about a dozen years ago, one of the former board members on the Davenport board served on the IASB board at that time. And I can remember as clear as anything when we were right in the middle of the whirligig and the darkest moments and under intense scrutiny by the Legislative Oversight Committee. I remember him talking with me, and then he talked with the whole board at a meeting one day, and he said, when do we get to set our agenda? It seems like everybody else is determining what we need to focus on. The lawyers, the oversight committee, other outside organizations, when do we get to set our agenda and start controlling our meetings? And as an observer, I can remember times over the last couple of years where you as a board and members of your board asked the same question in the intense moment. And one of the things that happened that Lisa mentioned after the board and the leader set longer term goals and the direction for the organization, I remember distinctly the board saying, we have to relearn some behaviors. When we were in the middle of the dark times and trust was not very high, and there were issues that the leaders were gone from the organization, had been dismissed, and the board was way down in the weeds on a lot of items and not really governing. The board was not spending its time on big picture direction of the organization. They were down in the weeds trying to verify facts and information because trust had been broken. And what the board said is we need to relearn how to govern. How are we going to focus so that we're providing the kind of leadership for the organization that it needs without doing all the day-to-day work, which is really what the executive leader and staff should be doing. And so it was relearning those behaviors. Another example, not from our organization, but I remember about a year and a half ago, 2 years maybe, spending an evening with a decent sized district in central Iowa, and they had been consumed for about 3 years on a facilities and building project. And they're looking at each other and saying, holy smokes, we have board members on the board now who've not known anything other than this intense dive and focus on facilities. We're going to have to relearn our behaviors here and how we govern the overall organization. It's much more than just facilities work. And I think that's a powerful insight. Kind of the work you're heading into is intensive facilities work, but that's not your only work. You know that. So those are insights, lessons learned. I really think the one about needing to relearn our work. So and Lou, is there anything else you would want to add before we ask them to reflect?
I don't want to take up a lot of time, but I just do remember after we went through the really hard time and got through the crisis because we almost went under. Almost didn't exist, and got to a point where we knew we were going to continue forward. We were floundering a little bit and still in pain, and that's when Tom Downs handed a baton literally to Lisa and said, "Now it's your turn to go." Sorry. And that's where you are now. You're getting through it, and now you can really set your agenda and go forward and really take this moment and seize it and go forward. And that's really cool to witness. And we experienced that, and now you are. So we're excited for that.
Absolutely. So would you just take a minute and skimming at page 1, if you have a particular insight, just jot down a word or two, or if you already did that. President Gosa would just like to just around the room real quickly, if there's an insight that each board member or Superintendent Schneckloff would want to share, or a question that you'd want to ask of Lisa, Lou, or me. We'd be good with that. So give you half a minute to get your thoughts collected. And then what's an insight, an aha, an observation, a parallel, whatever, or a question?
So give them a minute or two to reflect, Harry. Is that what
Yep.
you're saying?
Yep, half a minute would be probably plenty.
All right. He's giving you a whole 30 seconds.
And then President Gosa, if we could just around the room real quickly, you could share or pass, but aha, insight or a question you want to ask of us.
And Dan's handing it to me. Thanks, Dan. So,
Alrighty, great.
So with that, I'll start with Dan.
That backfired real quick. And you were wanting like key insights from our perspective of what our board went through.
Yep, or that you heard from us. You might find saying, "Hey, I haven't thought of that," or "Yep, we're experiencing something similar."
Yeah. I would tell you one of the biggest things was taking ownership of things, because I don't know how to say that. predecessors didn't do that and didn't take accountability for things. I mean, whether it was all of us that did it or not, we took ownership of it, and uh, made our apologies that there were mistakes made, and then kind of moved from there rather than letting it hold us down. I think that was probably one of my biggest takeaways with that. I think through the whole process, it's made us a better board. We're always at the forefront of what's best for the students and stuff like that. So.
Thanks, Dan. So I think we'll just go ahead and go this way. Linda, do you want to share?
I think one of my main things was accountability. We were given information, and when we asked for data or something to validate what we were told, we were getting pushback and didn't really push the issue to make sure we got what we needed. So now, everyone is held accountable for whatever it is that needs to be done. And our story, I can kind of empathize with what you all went through, because we had periods of being in the paper, being on the news, and it's like, oh my God, what next? But basically, you just own up to it, like Dan said, and go forward and try to do better. But I think my key thing would be accountability.
Thank you, Linda. How about you, Bruce?
The whole thing reminded me just the grief cycle that we went through. At first, you were like, "You people are nuts. What's the matter with you?" And then we were mad. How dare you? Bunch of unelected bureaucrats. There's still a bunch of unelected bureaucrats. But and then we finally had to sort of accept the fact that we were the fish on the hook. And then I think since that time, as a board, we get along a whole lot better. I mean, they externally imposed a set of circumstances to which we had to function. And at first, we didn't like it. Nobody likes to be told what to do. I don't like to be told what to do. My wife knows that. But I think in the long run, we came out at the end with a greater understanding of what we need to do as individual board members and as a collective board to make sure we provide the services we're here to provide for the kids in the district.
Thanks, Bruce. Karen, your insights?
So since I'm new to the board, I haven't been a part of most of this process. I just get to celebrate the good times, which doesn't really seem fair. But one of the insights from Lisa was recognizing and acknowledging those who have stuck around through the dark years. And I know we have several board members that have been here through all of it and beyond. And I'm so thankful for all the work that you guys have done. I think we owe that same recognition to the staff in the buildings that have stayed through the whole process as well. They have done a lot as well.
Thanks for sharing, and don't feel guilty for not being here. I can tell you that when new staff came that weren't part of that, the stuff that we went through, they brought a new energy and positivity that really helped the rest of us. So that for what that's worth. Same with the board. Yeah. Karen, what about you?
I can relate to the fact that I've been on the board a little over 2 years. I've never been on the board where we haven't been in trouble. The state's on our back the whole time. So it is to a point where it's like we can now set our own agenda. That's totally new for me because we've just had to march in line however they told us to do things. So it is relearning how to deal with not having somebody looking over your shoulder telling you what to do.
Thanks, Karen. Kent?
It seems like we've been playing catch up for the last couple of years, just trying to correct basically decisions that were not made, and then we're paying for it now. So it's been frustrating to have to spend all our time on some of those items instead of focusing on student achievement. I think some good things that came out of this. I think we have a very sound committee structure now. The committees are active. The committees are focused. So I think that's going to be a big help. Keeping in mind that the committees serve the whole board, and so we can't make sure that we become compartmentalized and just do our own thing. The other thing I think we have to be careful about is that we don't start patting ourselves on the back too much because we're a long ways from where we need to be. When you look at our early literacy, you look at absenteeism, dropout prevention. These are things that really concern me, and if we're going to improve student achievement, those areas are going to have to be addressed. But again, we are in much better shape than we were 2 years ago.
Thanks, Kent. Allison?
Well, the first thing I thought was sort of strange parallels, the way you guys described your experience, and then how I sort of see our experience as well. And I remember those days when it was like every day in the paper, or I'd see Davenport pop up, and I'm like, oh no, what's going to be this time? And that was even before the state stepped in. I just felt like it was negative a lot. So it's nice to see an organization that's sort of fully on the other side of things. And I think Bruce said it. It's a brief period. People will sort of forget. I don't want to say forget because we can't forget. We have to make sure that we don't go back to where we were. But the further away we get from mismanagement or whatever whatever term we choose to describe it, the easier it will be to sort of not feel like it's hanging over your head. I guess is the way I'm thinking of it. So that's kind of my big thing.
There's light at the end of the tunnel. Thanks for sharing. TJ.
I think my biggest takeaway from listening to you reflect is where we are right now. You use the term make sure the trains run on time. And I think that's one of the things that we are doing and need to continue doing to build the culture. If you look, we settled on contracts first. They were respectable. We started our staffing way earlier than we ever have. We're doing our retirement dinner, our growing excellence awards are moving forward. Those types of things repeated over time is what I think I heard you say is what builds back your culture. We're also going through our what does strategic planning look like for us, because we stopped our teaching and learning plan. We focused on what we were directed to focus on, and now we have the ability to focus on what we think is important. But what does that look like? And so that's I'm glad to hear you say that was critical to your development, because that's exactly the direction we have the Davenport plan right now. And that was directed to us, and we got used to that. But what does that look like from school board to district-wide goals, to building goals, to family community impact? So that to me is where those are my key insights from what you were talking, because that's where we are. Like okay, now make sure the trains run on time. And I didn't realize how, because I'm always thinking of ways to help build back the culture, but really making sure the trains run on time is how you build back the trust in the culture. So that was my takeaway from your guys' reflection.
Great.
You want to make comments? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just add, in Lou, I'm thinking it's already moved us into that second page, so I'm going to abbreviate that piece. you can turn to page 2. If there's a burning question of Lisa, Lou, or me, we'd be glad to answer it about our situation. And if there's not a burning question, we'll just slide into page 2 here. Anybody have a burning question about from what we shared?
So in terms of other culture building items, what were the top two things other than making sure the trains run on time? That just jump right to your brain.
I think
Go ahead,
Tina's
Lisa.
taking care
Yeah.
of me now. Celebrating wins is when you're knowing what your kind of key performance indicators are, and then celebrating when we do those well, but never accepting. And I want to go to what Kent said, never being complacent that you're really there yet. Because we tell this story about that part of our history, but now there are new challenges that we're facing. I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot has changed at the state capitol in recent 2 years. In terms, so you'll never be the organization of your vision because you'll always be updating your vision with new trends, new issues. But celebrating wins along the way, giving people confidence. But I always call that phrase what you want to raise, right? If you want things for us, like new board member training, and is a key performance indicator. It's why we're here. It's to welcome those 400 and some new school board members every 2 years. And that's something we celebrate and focus on, just as one example. Harry, what else?
Yeah, I would say any organization can set goals. The real challenge, and you guys have been working on this as a district, is maintaining those, keeping those in the spotlight, focusing your meetings on progress toward those goals. I keep thinking of your board questions that you guys weave in and use every time there's a progress report or an update from administration or staff on progress toward goals and the data, that those questions are in front of you, they're in front of your staff, they know you're going to ask those questions. You don't ask all of them every time, but keeping the main thing the main thing. That would be my 2 cents worth. Lou, anything else you'd add?
Oh, just the affective side. I think you covered it, Lisa. Acknowledging that it takes time, that people may be still hurting, and to keep talking and letting people listen as they continue to move forward, though, and not forgetting that the active side of what the staff or the board may need as you move forward.
Great. All right, any other burning questions? Or we'll slide on to page 2.
Just one more culture thing that I think is very important. Our board works very hard to provide a good accountability system of data that we're to provide to show our outcomes. But there's this ability to take risks, to try something new, and not have it go so well, and then learn from it as a staff, and then improve it next time. So that balancing of high expectations with that ability to innovate, that's one of our the board's core values is innovation, service, innovation, accountability. Those go hand in hand. Deliver great service, have the ability to take some risks and innovate, but be accountable for results.
Okay, I promise this is the last one, Allison. And when the board says nice things about staff, don't ever underestimate how much that goes towards building that positive culture. Allison?
Along those lines, and kind of piggybacking a little bit on what TJ was saying, you mentioned, Lisa, the mission and vision and goals and things like that. And that's something that we've been talking about as well, kind of this great resetting. Maybe that's what I'm going to call it, with a capital G and a capital R. But to what extent did adjusting or rewriting the mission and vision statements for the organization help, or did it not? Did it matter? Like how much do those? Did you find those guiding what you guys were doing?
Excellent question. So, um, I would say what really helps is to, that process of writing your mission and vision, it matters most to the people who do it at the time. Our words, right, that we own because we helped create them. And then over time, the people that helped create them cycle out, and they're not here anymore. And I think, Allison, it's doing the work together, engaging the board, with staff, with the community, to create that shared commitment, whatever those processes look like, and then rebuilding, acknowledging that new people come on the board who weren't there when we did that work before. And for ISD, the time at the zoo, we all came together, right? Is you have to constantly rebuild it, and we use our strategic planning process as part of that, revisiting that, and I orient every new staff member about why those are important, and it's not the activity every 5 years. It's using that cycle as part of knitting the board and the staff together, and the community of members for us, about where you're going and why.
Okay, Lou. Yeah.
Just to follow up to Allison's question. How much time should we as a board should we really be spending on that? To me, personally, I don't think we should be spending a lot of time on it. If the vision and mission statement might be something that makes you feel good, but in bottom line, is it doing anything for student achievement? I mean, it's what we do as a board, what actions that we take that really make it matter. And so I just question whether this is something that we need to spend a whole lot of time on or not.
My answer is you have to decide what the balance is. And then you have to live it. The important thing is living it. I'll just quote one of our board members who said, I hate strategic planning, but I really like what we do. Because they could see that it turned from that work, the more high level, the words we put on the wall, and for you that could come through your mission and vision, or your branding work. I mean, what do I know about you? Creating excellence. I see it everywhere I look. What do you stand for? But and then delivering results, using data to hold the system accountable, as Linda said, and you have to find that balance. What motivates people to come together, and then knowing that it's doing the work that actually causes that success.
Harry, do you want to make a comment about clarity or focus?
I was thinking in response, this is partially at Lou, to Kent's comment about we're not, I don't find myself advocating that organizations or districts have to spend hours and hours and hours and hours recrafting the mission or vision. It might be a quick look in terms of, is this still applicable, and get the energy behind what are our actions and goals and how well are they aligned with that vision? Can we connect the dots that the things we're doing, as you said, Kent, and the decisions we're making are actually moving us in the desired direction? And so that's my quick take, and you get at that clarity in your district will help see that clarity by how you're spending your time in relation to the mission, vision, and goals. That's my quick take. We okay, Lou, as you observe around the room? Can we slide on to page 2 and the next couple of pages after that now?
Sure. You want to set it up?
Right. You bet. I would just a quick comment about page 2, and I'm going to use the example. I think it was Kent said earlier about. I want you to think about just name one thing. You don't have to elaborate on it, but just identify one thing, one board action that has helped you make progress on your board soup goals, and or helped you make progress on receiving state accreditation over the last couple of years. And Kent, your example earlier was we have a sound committee structure that's focused. and it's the committee operating on behalf of the whole board, not the other way around. That the committee's there to serve the board. So that's a nice, crisp example of an action you guys have taken. Repeats are good. Would just volunteers quickly share what's something concrete, a board action, a step you've taken that's helped you make progress? Doesn't mean everything's in order, but it's helped you make progress the last couple of years.
For me, it's been our work with ISD, with the workshops and the trainings that we've had and our monthly debriefs. I think that's helped us to become a more cohesive board.
Thank you. Somebody else?
I agree. The committee structure, but also the dedication of the board to the district. I don't think people realize how many hours that board members put in on committees, board meetings, visiting schools to make sure or to check and see how things are being implemented and things like that. So we're able to talk about it a little more at our meetings, and just the amount of discussion and things at our meetings been a lot better than they were.
Nice. Someone else?
We've also set up a calendar so that we have the superintendent's evaluation every quarter instead of just coming to the end of the year and going, oh yeah, we better do this. I mean, we're very focused on okay, what needs to happen in May, what happens in June, what happens in July, what issues we have to address. And I think that timeline and calendar has kept us more on task.
Nice.
Yeah, I think we've increased our financial literacy in how the board can oversee the finances of the district. And that Larry, what's his name?
Gary?
The money guy who talks out of the ceiling.
Yeah, Gary Sinclair? Yeah.
He's been a real asset.
Cool. Anybody else that hasn't had a chance to weigh in yet?
I think one of the things that moves this group farthest, fastest is the fact that there's an agenda committee, there's a discussion, and there's an action. When I think about in October, middle of November 2018, this board was seeing things like reduce 72 people on a Thursday night and have to do it on a Monday, programs and the trauma associated with that. So this board is very protective of that, and the information that is needed to make a decision is they're seeking. We put out a Friday report every week, and they read it. I can tell they read it, and that's really important. So they're using information to make decisions and ask questions, and also it's helping build trust back with the administration. That's the big thing that I noticed.
2 years ago, and Siobhan and I came and worked with y'all, as our kids in text would say, and we did that whole session on needs versus wants information. Do you remember that? And look at where you are now. That's huge. That's huge. Anybody else have something to share? Okay, Harry? Oh, Bruce wants to add a little bit more.
I don't know this is so much as a board action as it is the reaction of our community. In terms of we've had several board elections when we were persona non grata, and no nuts got elected to the board. I mean, no axe to grind. People ran and got elected to the board. Most of us just got reelected.
Thank you. Anyone else? Last call, or we'll slide forward.
I think we can move on, Harry.
Great. Lou, my take would be when we move to the protocols, let's go to with C and D about what's been tested, especially as you think about the facilities work so far, and D, what might be challenging moving forward. Okay.
Okay, sounds good. So we're going to look at page three, which are your information flow operating protocols. And Karen, don't know how much you have actually seen this document, maybe once or twice since you came on the board, but this was developed, gosh, I think a year and a half ago here it began, and it's been in a work in progress ever since. And so we work to keep it, raising it to your level of consciousness, because as it's getting ingrained into your habits of practice, it's helpful to stop and talk about it every now and then. So we just have a couple discussion questions for you. So the operating protocols are on page three, but let's take a look at page five. Is that what you're talking about, Harry? And so of those questions, which ones do you want us to focus on, Harry? One, two, or three? You're muted.
Yes, I'm thinking 2 and 3. Sorry.
Okay. So let's just have you look at your protocol. And we're just going to focus on questions two and three and have a little bit of individual reflection time. And then we'll just do some group sharing out like we are now before we move into some smaller group activity. So which of these protocols have been noticeably tested during this last couple of years? You've been through a lot. And so probably not hard to think about how some of these protocols have been challenging to stick with. Which have been tested? And which might be the most challenging to follow during the long-term facility work that you have coming up, just doing a little bit of forecasting on that. Okay? So let's have you just do a little bit of reflection and we'll share out. Okay, Harry, it looks like people are going to start sharing. So I'm just going to invite you all to just share out as you'd like. And we'll start with the first question. Which of the protocols have really been tested and share why or how maybe. Linda, you want to start us off?
I think our structure for our agenda meetings has become pretty solid with everything laid out and what needs to be done when. We discuss the pertinent topics, and a lot of those issues also come up from our board requests. So we've gotten pretty good with that, to put it on the agenda, have a discussion about it, and vote on it. And I think that's worked really smooth for us and cut down on a lot of the board requests that's really not pertinent to what we're talking about.
So that protocol has really worked well for you and to help keep that practice in place. Okay, thanks. Someone else have a protocol that's been tested during this last couple of years?
You kind of left it broad in the past 2 years, so I would say almost every one of them. The ones I picked, 2, 3, 4, and 9, on the agenda, like when we're planning that, trying to figure out how much time it's going to take for subjects, and then sometimes when we're having a discussion, we get off topic, and then it takes me a little bit to catch on and rein it back into where we're getting back on what we're talking about. And then when we first started doing the committees, it was a little bit different. The committees weren't like we had to get it established that as we serve on committees serve at the pleasure of the board. And then four, I think this one's the biggest one. When questions arise between meetings with the superintendent, I think some of our staff go straight to board members, and we let that happen. And then it affects things at the board table when we do discussions and things like that. Because obviously every staff member is going to advocate for their building or their programs and things like that, and then it gets things sideways at a meeting. So that's been a huge one. And then that kind of is number 9. You know, when you get especially because this is going to be something we're going to have a lot to deal with here coming down the road with long range facilities plan and things like that. I think people target us all individually, whereas we need to get to the point where like, hey, you got to go protocol. You know. I do little league and things like that. Parents will come up and I'm like, hey, did you do this? This is how you need to do it. Don't just come to me because if you come to me, that would look like the superintendent's not doing their job the same as I would hope all of our staff realize when they jump ahead of the superintendent to come to a board member. And then it makes the superintendent look like they don't know what's going on, but they wouldn't like it if one of their staff members in their building came to us, because then it makes it look like they don't know what's going on. So I think we're still kind of working through that, but I would say would probably be our most habitual offender is that one.
Thanks, Dan. Anybody else have insights to share? Or affirm something you've heard?
I would affirm what the board members have said, and the example that I gave earlier blindsides board members. And I think we established protocols to prevent the blindsiding of one another presenting a team format. And I'll never forget when Thomas Mays, when we got our accreditation back, he said, never forget, as long as it took you to get into something, sometimes it oftentimes takes just as long to get out. And so that there was a void, and everybody in this room wanted to jump in and help carry that water and fix that. And so you know the question information that comes at board members and the cabinet and things like that. I think the biggest struggle is coordinating us not blindsiding the board and the board not being blindsided, both ways. And I just can't celebrate enough how much we do that. I get questions about certain things because the bottom line is that if one board member has that question, a lot of people do, and it's about trying to get that information to our school board members so they can make the best discussion possible. So that those, I think about where we were in the middle of November and the blindsiding that was occurring, and we're that was really that notion was battle tested over this time frame because people do come at this group of human beings from all angles, and I'm very proud of that because I think our board. I mean, we have moments where we stub our toes all the time, and myself included. But we know that these are our protocols. This is what we agreed to, and I'm very proud of that that mode of communication because we are moving in the right direction.
Thanks, TJ. Harry, do you have any comments you want to make, or does anybody else have something they want to share? Dan?
On number two, I want to say one of our biggest strides I think we've made on our agendas is we discuss things before we take action on it. That is a huge thing that we've never done, and it allows for us to ask to discuss or have the discussion. If board members have other questions, the staff knows what to get before we vote on it. That's been a huge thing because it wouldn't be nothing to get the agenda Friday 5 o'clock. Hey, you're gonna vote on this stuff on Monday. So it's been a huge. Now, granted, some things come here and there, and it's included in the Friday report. But I would say that has been a huge night and day difference from where we were a few years ago to now. It allows us to have better discussion. It allows the staff to interact as well. And then when we have that discussion, they know where the board members are coming from, what information they need to feel comfortable voting on something. So
You all were really hurting when you came out of even when we first started working together. The perceived, I'm saying my perception of your lack of information from previous staff, but you've asked for that change. You're the ones that made that difference because you asked and wanted it, and have held yourselves and your superintendent accountable for improving that communication. And that's part of how this all came about because you identified that need and then asked and expected it. So that I just see a huge difference in that. Harry, what would you like to say?
Was just going to draw our attention to number 2, it should be in blue font. I think Karen Gordon, you had suggested something like that at the January workshop. Then in March, we brought some language and it didn't quite strike the right chord yet. It said something like maximize the board's time. So Dan, Linda, TJ, Lou, and I talked about number 2 and tweaked the wording some more, hoping or asking if that's closer to what you're hoping for that protocol. So does that resonate better with you, number 2? And then Lou, I have a comment about the next activity before we slide into that. How's number 2 look? Read the room.
Yep. Is that number two? That additional wording okay for you? Thumbs up. That's okay. Yep. Anybody have a suggestion for anything different? No. That's good, Harry.
Okay, then if you turn to page 5, and Lou, you can facilitate this in a minute. I think what we ought to do is just ask that you grab your materials, walk across the table to somebody else that's not sitting right next to you, and just talk for a couple of minutes about what were your takeaways from your communications meeting last week, and what do you hope the impact your common messages are going to be. And so if we partner up for a couple minutes, Lou, and just let them have a short discussion and be ready to share a couple ideas from you and your partner in 3-4 minutes.
Yep, and that's on page 6 about the board work session.
Yes, thank you.
And Harry, Mike is here in the room also. Just wanted to recognize him.
All right, terrific. He may want to park it with a group or just listen and hear overall when they share. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Okay, you guys all clear on what the go find somebody, share your insights about page 6. Key takeaways from that last workshop with Mike and his team. Okay.
Thanks for moving around. Appreciate it.
Okay, Harry, I think everybody's ready to come back together, and I think we're going to ask, would you all like to take a 4 or 5 minute break, or would you like just to keep on working? Would you like to take a 4 or 5 minute break, or would you just, yeah? Okay. All right, we're going to adjourn until about 5 till. Okay, Harry? Not adjourn. Sorry, that was the wrong word. Taking a break for 5 minutes, yeah.
Great.
Or a cupcake break. Okay, Harry, we're coming back together.
Perfect. Want to do lead a quick debrief, Lou, on those questions on page 6, and then we'll move to the last activity.
I'll start.
Thank you, Allison.
Oh yeah.
We're just going to do a quick debrief on your discussion from page 6, and then we'll move on.
So, Karen Gordon and I were chatting, and our key takeaways were really how important it is for us to have a unified front and unified responses about the long range facilities planning, despite whatever personal opinions we may have. And that I don't know is a very valid answer if you don't actually know. So.
Linda?
Kent and I were pretty much on the same with the unified front, although we used basically consistent language and to shamelessly steal Mike's quote that we're trying to build the best learning environment to facilitate opportunities.
Can you repeat the quote again, Linda?
Trying to build the best learning environment to facilitate opportunities.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, thanks for sharing. Others? Karen?
Stand message using data. Be empathetic and be positive about it.
Anybody else? I'm working with the board on Thursday night. Can I just have y'all come and share all this really goodness with them? Because we could really learn a lot from this conversation. Okay, Harry, want to set us up for the next activity or have a comment? Harry, unmute.
You're muted.
TJ, just from an administrative perspective, any overall takeaways from last week's session?
No, I think our board members summed it up perfect, Harry.
All right, sounds good. Then what I'm going to ask you to do for this piece is we're going to work in 3 small groups of 3, and we've asked Brenda to participate with us on this one because she's so integrally involved in terms of communication. So I'm going to ask you to get into 3 groups of 3. TJ, if you pick a spot, and a couple board members can join you, and Dan pick a spot, and Linda pick a spot. And then Brenda, go with a different group than where TJ is. So we've got staff in a couple different places. So get into groups of 3, please. Take your materials with you, and then we'll set up page 7 and have you do some legwork on this. So Dan with a couple board members, Linda with a couple, and TJ. And Lou, it looks like folks are getting in a pretty good spot here.
We got our three, Harry.
All righty, great. And Lou will bring some materials around to you next, but if you look on page 7, here's what we're asking you to do over the next probably 15 minutes-ish, maybe a little less than that. But first, we just ask you right now before you start sharing, just individually, we want you to be thinking about what situations, what conversations may have already come up when constituents or staff communicate with you about facilities or what might come up in the coming months. And individually, just jot down a couple of situations. You don't have to write the whole situation, but get a couple of words down. Have a situation or 2 in mind that are either have come up or already or likely to come up when constituents have questions or comments approach you about the facilities work. What have you bumped into already? What do you expect is going to come up that might be hard?
Does that make sense? Does anybody need clarity on that? Your writing scenarios, basically.
Yep, and they're just getting initial thoughts individually because we'll get a richer conversation than if we just start talking out of the chute. And then Lou, help me out here in terms of, are you ready to start sharing and recording on chart paper or need more time?
I think we need another minute or two, Harry.
Okay. Then we'll have you share with each other in your small groups.
Harry, I think we're ready to go to the next one.
Sounds good. So then here's what we're asking you to do. In the next few minutes, concentrate on steps 2 and 3. Quickly share your situations. I've been approached with this sort of question or this sort of comment, or here's something I envision that's going to be challenging. And then the three of you choose, so share your ideas and then pick one of those scenarios and just in a sentence or two in pretty large font, like 2-3 inches tall on a piece of chart paper, capture a couple of phrases or a sentence or two that summarizes the situation. Getting approached about topic X or Y, or here's a hard question somebody's asked you, or here was an awkward moment, whatever. Get that summarized in a sentence or two on chart paper. And then on your second piece of chart paper, for this scenario, the three of you please talk about what are a couple thoughts, a couple ideas that you might share in response to that situation. And rely on some of the kinds of things you talked about last week at your communications workshop or that we talked about last month in a work session. So you want to just generate what are a couple thoughts that would be important to include in your response. Get that on your second piece of chart paper. If you have time, you could repeat that with another scenario, but if you got one good scenario with some thoughts down, we have enough to share and even do a test run in a few minutes. So share your situations, pick one, flush it out a little further, generate some thoughts, capture those on chart paper, and be ready to share those with the large group in a few minutes. Lou, anything else you'd add about directions?
No, I think you nailed it, Harry. Thanks.
Okay, you're the taskmaster. Let me know when you're ready for the next part.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
They're drawing short straws to see who has to be the recorder.
One criteria is whoever has the most legible handwriting. That would not be me.
Okay, everybody, Harry, everyone's recorded their first scenario and then the response.
Had to unmute myself. They've reported on their chart paper. Have other groups seen those, or are we at a good spot they can share?
I'm sorry, Harry, say that again.
Yep. They've got them recorded, or at least the samples you sent. Thank you. Are they ready? They could quickly share those, and then we'll do a little bit of speculating on those.
Yeah. How do you want to do the sharing, Harry? Should everybody go hang them up on a wall and talk about them, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. At least get the scenario up first, and I'll help lead the other groups. How would you answer that? And then we'll let the group that thought of it share their thinking as well.
Okay, well, we're going to just start with the scenario, not the response,
Yep.
right?
Yep. So let's get the scenarios up on the wall. Leave a little bit of space, Lou, that you'll be able to hang yours up in a few minutes.
Okay, so do you want to just start with one, or do you want to hang up all three?
Yep. That sounds good. Pick one and let's see what shakes out here.
Okay, Harry, we have our first scenario that's going to go up, although some people want to put all three of them up. So should we just
Great.
should we just put it over there, Allison, on that wall?
And while she's hanging those up, Dan, Linda, TJ, Mike, is Mike still in the room? You've got these on chart paper. We did that so that you can draw on and use them in the future for depending on how far we get tonight. It'd be real live test cases about how do you respond when these sort of things come up.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and hang up all three scenarios, so we can start with the first one, Harry.
Good. And would you pick one, Lou? Read it out loud real quickly. That's for my old eyes, virtual from afar.
Yep.
And then I'll set up the next discussion around that.
Okay, now we're all spread around the room, but
Okay.
we'll start with Allison, TJ, and Kent's quote. Would one of you like to read your own scenario?
Ours, the one we decided on was, you say that you're going through a process, but doesn't the board already know what it's going to do?
Okay. So each threesome, talk for a few minutes, just a couple of minutes about what are your initial impressions. How would you respond when that comes up? What would you draw from among your talking points or thoughts here? How would you respond to that? And then Allison, TJ, and Kent will have you guys share your thinking in a couple of minutes. How would you respond? What would be your initial thoughts from your work so far the last month on messages and last week in particular?
Harry, we're all ready.
Yeah, I'm muting myself. So, Dan, your group, how would you guys respond? What would be those magic words that you hope would roll off your tongue when you encounter this sort of scenario?
Well, Harry, we just discussed this, and I've been asked this question actually, and I told them all that we have a long range facilities plan committee made up of community members that are putting together the pathways and things like that. And the board has not influenced that in any way, so we're kind of outside and letting them hone it down. So then the board can take the information that the community has provided to us. From there. So purposely, I think the majority of the board members haven't been at those meetings. I know Bruce and I are on the committee, and we did make it a point when we were there to let them know, hey, we just kind of were here to observe this one. We're not here to influence in any way. Just kind of see how the process, because I think people don't realize what goes into the decision making, how many factors you have to consider, and things like that. So it's kind of been nice for us because we're able to step back from that part of it and let the community do a lot of the heavy lift on that.
Karen and Brenda in your group, Dan?
Yes, sir.
I'm really testing these old eyes. Karen and Brenda, any other insights you would have when you encounter this kind of scenario?
I think my only comment would be that the board sees the information at the same time as the public does, so they have no advantage or disadvantage in terms of receiving information.
Thank you. Karen, anything else? So you're nodding on that one. Anything else you would add?
Nope.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's go to the other group. Was that Linda, Bruce, and Karen? Is that right?
Good job, Harry.
Okay. So how would you what would your thoughts? One of you share. What did you guys talk about when you encounter this sort of situation?
Are we responding to the same scenario?
Yes, please.
Yeah. I think one of the things we would respond by saying that this community group is made up of teachers from every building, from every building, and general community members. That we're sending a survey out to every address in the district to get the public's feedback, and that the data that's been used to draw us to these conclusions is public for anyone to see. It's right there. It's hard data that's been generated by this large ranging community group, and that we have not predetermined anything.
And my guess is you're going to find, Bruce, that you as board members, you may be repeating that every time over and over and over with certain groups, because while you've heard it maybe multiple times, each person seeing you, it's the first time maybe they've had that conversation. Linda or Karen, any other insights that crossed your mind as you think about this scenario?
No, Bruce pretty much covered it for us.
Okay, now let's go to the originating group. Allison, TJ, Kent. What was your thinking? And then after you've shared, we'll just have you put your chart paper up on the wall below your scenario. What did you guys talk about?
We emphasized being empathetic first, and then saying that basically what everybody else said. We had input from a wide variety of people that did not include the board and a professional firm. And we are building a better learning environment for our students, utilizing. I can't remember what I wrote. TJ's hanging it up right now.
Okay, the quote from the workshop with Mike, right?
The input and data to make the best decisions.
Great. And by the time we get back to the original group, your group, Allison, look how much consistency is already emerging just because you're intentional in spending some time on these sort of things. Lou, let's go to another group scenario. So either Dan or Linda's group. Pick one, please, Lou. You can see them better than I can.
We call it the what about what ifs, where you get random questions like what about my kid's school, or what about the curriculum that's going to be where my kid's going, or how's my kid going to get to school, or what's going to happen to teachers in my building, or am I going to still get bus transportation? Just those personal individual concerns that the public or citizens or parents or teachers or kids will have. Coaches may have the same. Well, am I going to still be able to coach that team? Or what's going to happen to the band? That sort of thing.
Thanks, Bruce. So each group just take a couple minutes, revisit the what about kind of situation. And Bruce, yours, Linda, and Karen's group, you guys press yourself. Is there anything else? Do a second quick look at it. Is there anything else in addition to what you have on your chart paper that you might add? And we'll hear from all of you in a couple of minutes. All right, how would you respond?
Okay, Harry.
All right, Lou, since you can see folks better than me, would you please pick one of the other two groups to share their thinking, kind of navigate those couple pieces, and then we'll have Bruce's group share their thinking.
Sure. I have a group that just volunteered over to my left. Thank you. Kent?
Well, number one is we just said that we're looking at planning facilities right now, so we're not necessarily looking at transportation or curriculum. Our focus right now will be on facilities only, and then after that decision is made, then we look at the how some of these other things will be implemented.
Allison or TJ, anything else you would add?
No, we just talked about sort of starting broad. We don't know the answer, and then we'll narrow. And the website. There's going to be a website where people can get their questions answered.
Great. All right, let's go to the other group, Lou.
Okay, Karen?
Kent stole our answer. That we are looking at the data and we are only focused on building the facilities, making sure that we have the best facilities for our learning environments. And right now, that's all we're focused on.
Nice. And again, it helps to hear the consistency, and I would attribute your past work and current work to that. Dan, did I interrupt you there?
He said that Karen stole his answer.
I just said that Karen hijacked my answer.
All right. Okay. And Bruce, Linda, and Karen, your thoughts, and then would one of you put your chart paper up there? What did you guys think when you identified this scenario?
Well, the good news is it seems like we're on the same page as everyone else in the room. We first came at it with empathy. I understand this is hard. And then just we're trying to create the best learning environment for all of our students. And that's what it comes down to.
Great. And I think back to the word empathy. That
Also,
came
we're
up
going to
last.
follow board protocol and give the phone number of the superintendent to all these people.
Was that office number, cell number, or both?
And the president too.
Okay. All right, let's repeat this with the third scenario. So
Okay, so
Dan,
this is the scenario. Do you want to read it, Dan? Okay, what will happen to me as a staff member? Did you want to elaborate at all on this question?
Well, because we've been through this before a few years ago, and immediately as soon as names get put to buildings, whenever they figure out what the plan is, which I want to go on the record and say that has not been made yet. Nothing has been named, so I don't want any phone calls after this. But as soon as you start talking about that stuff, staff members are worried, am I going to have a job, where am I going to work, and things like that. So that's probably going to be a huge question that we'll face as well, which rightfully so, right? Everyone wants to make sure they have a job and are employed in that.
Okay. So talk at your groups for a couple minutes and we'll share out. Okay, so we'll finish, wrap it up, get ready to share out. Bruce and Karen and Linda, let's start with you this time. What did you say?
The response was going to be that we're dealing with the facilities. We're not at that point yet. But when if and when we come to that point, and it's going to affect you or your building, there will be a plan in place, as there always has been whenever we have had some sort of a large transfer of staff in the district. There'll be a plan in place that everybody will know about.
And this is hard. We understand.
Thanks, Karen. Linda, anything else to add?
Yes, we did say it is okay to say no. We don't know. We'll have to get that information and get back with you. But there will be a plan in place.
Okay, how about Kent, Allison, and TJ?
Well, we noted that Dan fell into one of the traps
we were warned about
last week. Because if you can't, we don't know if we're closing schools or changing anything. So the real question is, we don't know what's going to happen to anybody. But if people end up being moved to different buildings or things like that change, then we will have a plan in place.
TJ or Kent, anything else to add? Harry, he's saying that they are pretty much summed up by the first group. Okay.
Got it.
So now Brenda's going to hang up the response. Karen, do you want to share your response?
And that is why I threw the disclaimer out there when I was talking about this. But our response will be focused right now. We're focusing on facilities, creating positive learning environments. Eventually, staffing will be addressed. The plan will be clearly communicated.
So a related question for all of you, and just take 1 minute, and it's not on a sheet anywhere. Talk with your small group. Do you think the nature of the kinds of comments or questions you're going to receive from community or staff over the next 6 months are going to change? Do you think they're going to evolve, or do you think there'll be a lot of the same static questions just repeated over? Talk with your teammates. What do you think and why? When they look ready, Lou, let's hear from them.
Okay, let's go around the room and see what your insights were to hear this question.
I'll start, Lou.
Thanks, Stephen.
So the right now we're still in the beginning phases, but as it becomes more technical, being grounded to our pillars and what we believe in and how we arrived here are going to be critical. And so we discussed at our last one having sessions like this to continue to digest the information to where we can answer as unified as possible. This is really impressive. I mean, this is a blind answering of these questions, and they're almost all identical. That's pretty impressive.
And,
I
and I,
relate this to you know how the when you're preparing for a play and you get so tired of doing your lines and then when it's time to do the play, you're ready for that environment. It kind of feels like that. Or for me, a practice and you practice and you finally prepare for the event. That's what that feels like to me. So for us, this was heavily preparing us for the environment that we're in, and it'll continue to build on itself as we move forward. But I think we need to continue to be intentional with our language. Sorry.
and I would just add to that Linda, Dan, TJ, and their conversations, part of why we're running this tonight, important pieces, because they said we think we probably would benefit from some continued conversation like this and apply these, put them to use. So cool.
Luke, can I add that?
Yeah.
So the other thing that I think is really important about this is the language is at a governance language, because I think at our last session, the community tries to drag board members into a management level question. And that was really highlighted out of our last conversation. And I noticed that all the board members are like when Bruce said you need to talk to the superintendent. Well, we're going to have a website answering all those questions and potentially put out a video. And I would appreciate that plug, Bruce.
Thanks, TJ. Karen, Brenda, Dan.
I think some questions will change over 6 months, but it also though will remain very personal. How will this affect my family? How will this affect my student? How will this affect me? It will, a lot of it within the district will remain. How is this going to impact me, my family, my job?
And that's helpful to recognize that, isn't it? Just even knowing that that's going to happen, so you're ready to be empathetic and know that it's because it is impacting families. Thank you. Dan or Brenda, anything else to add?
I'm just going to give a plug for our board and administration. I think this is awesome that we're having these discussions, which is live on YouTube. All of the meeting minutes from long range plans are posted on the website. All of our meeting minutes are on the website. So no one can say they didn't know and we weren't being transparent. And then the fact of having the community and staff members on that committee that's doing all that work, I mean, that's a huge testament to where Davenport was to where Davenport is now. Every board member, is dedicated to being transparent, open with our community as well as our staff. So it's helping us gain credibility back from where we were. Thank you for letting me get my shameless plug in.
How about Linda, Karen, or Bruce?
I think that for the most part, questions are going to stay the same. I said they may evolve somewhat because as time goes on, there's going to be rumors that come out from people who claim to know people who know someone who made a decision somewhere at some point in time. And so things will get more personal, but it'll still be the same type of question Karen said. They'll be personal to those people, and our response will be the same.
Thanks. Anything else, Bruce or Linda?
I think this particular workshop is again more evidence of the cohesiveness that we've had. All of us have broken off into different groups, but yet when you look at the board, everything is pretty consistent. So I guess the TikTok says we got the assignment.
Okay, Harry.
And I'm thinking back too, as you move forward and you hit those phases where the district and the committee is at a point and the board is making decisions that will eventually have ramifications potentially for staff, et cetera, then as TJ said, if you continue to occasionally have some discussions and exercises like tonight, that ought to help you be more proactive and stay out in front of what's coming. My guess is that Mike and the communications staff will be hearing things, themes that they can share with you as well. So that if I'm in your shoes, a couple of months from now, maybe sooner, whatever, I'm looking toward maybe another conversation like this that kind of helps you spruce up and be ready for whatever you anticipate the next round of questions or comments are so that you're unified and consistent in your answers. Lou, Lisa, anything else that you would add?
I think Lisa has been thinking about some thoughts.
Justin told me to pull it up close. Okay. So what struck me tonight is that you have these board operating protocols that are very concrete and actionable. You all know what they mean. But they have led you to really talk about informed decision making as a board. How do we have the data we need, the time we need to discuss it, the ability of our community to be transparent with the community so they know these decisions are being made, good processes in place, and that's the highest level of governance, right? Is that ability to make informed decisions. And then my second observation is you've talked about the common messages. Well, that doesn't mean when you come back to the board table ultimately to make the decision that you're going to agree on what the right solution is, right? You could see it differently. And that's where it's okay at the board table to vet those out and ultimately take your vote. And I think that's important to communicate in your own head too. That where we're working on the common messages is about our good process that allows us to make good decisions that in a transparent way that has community support. And then at the end of your decision, even if you disagreed about it at the board table, coming out with a common message about where you're going, which is its own set of work for another night. So kudos to you.
Harry, go ahead.
They've worked hard tonight, Lou. So I think we're at a spot where we would just ask them to quickly fill out the feedback sheet before they leave. And I think we've probably run this and squeezed every ounce of good thought we have had out of the process. That next page in your packet is something that we would leave for board leadership and TJ to think about, or any of those questions on page 8, something that as a next step you would want to debrief or talk about. But we've squeezed all your energy out of you tonight. Sound good by you?
Yep. So would you take a few minutes and please fill out the evaluation worksheet? It's on the last page.
And this helps Lou and I figure out where we have missteps or things we need to strengthen in our future work with you guys. My final thought is the word I think of when I think of your team. I'm back to Kent's comment earlier. There's a lot of important things we're not done yet, which is true. The encouraging part I want you to hear from us is you are coachable. You seek advice and you draw on it and use it. And we see continuing evidence of that. And that's an encouraging piece for us to work with you because you take the information that you discuss and are provided, you chew on it and you put pieces of it to use. Lou, closing comment for you.
Thanks for your leadership, willingness to continue to serve, and your commitment to learning. As we like to say, your learning is a gift that you give to your district. So thank you. Thanks to Justin. I feel like I'm on stage. Getting awards. I'd like to thank Justin. I'd like to thank Mike. Thanks, Harry. It's not easy doing this from afar, but it's great seeing you and working with you as always.
And those who are betting we'd be here till at least 8 or after, you're not, okay? Not on our account.
Harry, thanks for joining us from your basement, it looks like.
You got it.
We appreciate it. Lou and Lisa, we appreciate you driving down here to be with us in person. Personally, I want to thank you all because I'm not the same board member I was when I first got on this board. I've learned a lot from a lot of this and taken away a lot of things. So I do see. But I do appreciate all of the workshops and working with us and things like that. Does anyone have anything else? And then if you all will hang out so we can get a picture after I adjourn this. Let me make sure I don't have nothing else on my agenda. All right, Bruce.
So moved.
Is there a second to adjourn? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.